Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're jumping into Andrea O'Reilly's really groundbreaking book, Matricentric Feminism. We're going to explore a simple, but kind of revolutionary idea. What if mothers need a feminism created specifically for them and about them?
This quote from the feminist icon Adrienne Rich, it just hits you, right? It perfectly sets the stage by asking this huge question. In a world literally full of mothers, how is it possible that the actual experience of mothering is still so deeply misunderstood?
So, to really get why mothers might need their own feminism, we first have to look at the cultural box that society tends to build around them. And there's a name for this box: normative motherhood.
Let's just start with a quick question for you. When you hear the phrase, a good mother, what words pop into your head? Patient, selfless, nurturing, always available. These aren't just descriptions. They're part of a really powerful cultural script we're all handed.
So, normative motherhood is way more than just a vague idea. The source material defines it as a rigid set of rules that basically functions as an oppressive institution. It becomes this yardstick society uses to judge all mothers. And what's crucial is that it's a yardstick that's pretty much designed to be impossible to measure up to.
So how is this impossible standard actually built? Well, the author, Andrea O'Reilly, points to 10 dictates, these cultural demands that create the impossible job. Just think about privatization, which says this work should be hidden away in the home, or naturalization, which pretends this incredibly complex labor is just some instinct you're born with. When you start piling all these things up, anyone who can't or won't conform is automatically labeled a bad mother.
Okay, so if that's the massive problem, what's the solution? Well, this is where matricentric feminism comes in, and it offers a totally new way of thinking about all this.
So the most crucial starting point inspired by Adrienne Rich is to draw a sharp line between two things. On one side, you have the oppressive institution of motherhood. That's the rules, the judgments, the whole cultural script. And on the other, you have the personal, lived practice of mothering, the actual work of caring for another person. You see the difference? One is like a cage. The other is an action that can be incredibly empowering.
And this right here is the heart of the whole idea. Matricentric feminism takes mother and turns it from a noun, this static, rigid identity, into a verb, to mother. The work itself. It's not about who you are, it's about the work you do. And that simple shift is absolutely revolutionary because it suddenly degenders the work and opens the door to seeing mothering as a practice that anyone can do.
But of course, this leads us to a really important and, pretty complex modern debate about the words we use.
And here's the central tension, right? If the whole goal is to be inclusive of every single person who does this caregiving work, and that includes trans and non-binary people, then shouldn't we just switch to the word parenting? It's a real question of how you balance being inclusive with acknowledging very specific lived realities.
Matricentric feminism argues that, yeah, parent is often the right word, but if we switch to it exclusively, we actually end up erasing three really critical realities. So let's break those down.
The first argument is that for many, many people, mothering isn't just a personal choice, it's an act of political resistance. And the general term parenting just doesn't quite capture that weight.
For racialized women, for example, concepts like what Patricia Hill Collins calls mother work show that mothering is a unique source of power. We're talking about defying a history that literally denied them the right to their own children. It's about teaching survival, building community, creating safe spaces. So in this context, claiming the word mother is a radical act of defiance.
Okay, the second argument is a crucial one. It's that a gender-neutral term like parent can actually mask the fact that mothers and fathers often face completely different realities, especially when you look at systemic inequality.
Just look at this number. This huge pay gap. It's not a parenting penalty. It's a motherhood penalty. It's a systemic bias against mothers in the workplace, sometimes called the maternal wall. And we lose the ability to name that injustice and fight it if we erase the specific word.
And this chart makes that point impossible to ignore. During the COVID-19 pandemic, the data shows that the overwhelming burden of all that extra care work, homeschooling, emotional labor, all of it, fell disproportionately on mothers. Look at that huge spike in weekly hours for women, while men's increased way less. That gendered reality gets completely lost if we only talk about parents.
All right, and the third argument is maybe the most counterintuitive of all. The idea here is that the term mothering isn't kept to be exclusive, but to actually be expanded and challenged from the inside.
To queer motherhood basically means to destabilize that rigid traditional model. So by holding on to the term, activists can actually highlight how all these diverse experiences, from Black mothers to lesbian mothers to trans and non-binary parents, are actively disrupting that old, narrow definition of who gets to mother.
So, how do we move forward with all this? The goal isn't about picking one word and throwing the other one out. It's really about using language thoughtfully and strategically.
So the path forward is this kind of nuanced, three-part strategy. Step 1. Use inclusive language like parents as the default setting, in legal or medical contexts. Step 2. Hold on to mothers where it's needed to name and fight very specific injustices, like the motherhood penalty. And then step 3, actively work to reclaim mothering as this radical, inclusive action that anyone who is committed to the work can perform.
And this quote just sums it all up perfectly. The end goal isn't about division, it's about transformation. By redefining mothering as a radical action, the word itself becomes more inclusive, and eventually it can embrace everyone who does this vital work of care.
So this is the challenge and the promise of matricentric feminism. It really asks us if we can take a word that's loaded with all this oppressive history and actually transform it into a tool for liberation for everyone, to build a world that finally sees and values and supports the work of raising human beings, no matter who is doing it.